Something's changed. It's a sign show. Okay, so I am Doug Patt. For those of you that don't know, I have a YouTube channel called How to Architect. There are about 170 free videos on that site, and I continue to add more. If you visit howtoarchitect.com, there are currently 11 courses offered there. At the upper left-hand corner, there's a new course called How to Design Like an Architect, the Basics of Building Design, and that is a free course. I would encourage you to click on that and join this site. That'll help with what we're going to talk about today. So what I want to talk about today is the essentials of building design. So to back up and give you a little background, when I was in architecture school, one of the most challenging things for me was that I didn't really know what I was doing. I think that's the case for most people. When they're in architecture school, they don't really know what they're doing. So you've got first or second year, a professor says, hey, what I want you to do is we're going to design a building, could be any building, we're going to have an idea or a theme attached to that design. So design the building, and then we have a couple exercises that we're going to do. But the challenge is they don't really tell you what you're doing when you're designing. So I've spent, the last 20 years thinking about this, and over the last 5 years, I think I've kind of refined at least my ideas about what you're doing when you're when you're designing something. So I'm an architect and I design stuff, but I'm also a product developer, a product designer, an inventor, an entrepreneur. I do lots of stuff, and I design lots of stuff. So what I'm going to talk about today doesn't just have to do with architecture. It has to do with architecture and anything else in which you're designing something, okay? So keep that in mind. It's not just about architecture. So there are 4 questions that every designer deals with when they design something, okay? And as I said, it's not just architects, it's designers in general. Those 4 questions are who, what, where, and why. Now we ask the first 3 questions, who, what, and where, and we answer the last question, why. When I'm all done discussing this should be very clear as to what methodology everybody uses regardless of whether or not they know what they're doing. Everybody does when they design something. So the neat thing about this is when you sit down to design something, and I get asked this all the question, how do I design a certain thing? All you really need to do is ask these questions and then answer the last, and you're good to go. So let's get rolling here. So we've got these 4 questions. I'm going to sound a little bit like Dr. Seuss here with the who's and the what's and the where's and the why's, but it'll all make sense when we're done. So the first question that we ask is who. Now, as an architect, the who is the client, okay? And the client has a program. So I like to think about clients when they walk in the door, they've got a lot of baggage, and that baggage is going to inspire me to design something for them. So a client is the person or group of people for which you design a new building for. So it's a residential architect. A client walks in the door, or I go to see them, and they say, this is who I am, and this is what I want. Now, inevitably, it's kind of neat because when you sit down with these people, they tell you all about themselves, and you're gathering all that information. Then they tell you what they want. So that's the client, and that's the program. The program is the person or group of people's ideas, necessities, preferences, or requirements. That's the baggage I was talking about. So when you get information, you are then inspired whether you like it or not, whether you try to or not. You are inspired, and ultimately ideas come from that inspiration. So the first question is who, and we could talk a little bit about all this stuff later in reference to product design, product development. The second question is what, okay? So architects love the word typology, okay? That's a big architect word, but it's really just type, and every building is a type, okay? So the typology is the type of building. Every building typology inherently contains information for the architect to use for his or her design. So I like to think that there are 4 building types. There's residential, commercial, industrial, and institutional. Now, there's probably more. You've got like public architecture, you've got transportation architecture. There's definitely nuances there, but I like to think that there are 4 building types, okay? Interestingly, there are lots of subtypes. So those types can be broken down into subtypes. You got single family, multifamily, mixed use, manufacturing, office, lease, storage, shipping, shopping, healthcare, senior living, assembly, etc. I'm probably listing an eighth of what subtypes there really are, maybe not even that many. There are a lot. So you got type, you got subtype, and then you got type, I call it type style. So every building is a style. So you got classical, neoclassical. When you go to architecture school, you learn these things. Victorian, postmodern, modern, deconstructivist, etc. So you've got tons of different type styles. So the what that we're asking is type, and it can be broken down into all of these different categories and subcategories. But the point here is, when somebody comes into my office and says, I've got a contemporary home and I want a traditional edition, which never happens. I've got a traditional home and I want a contemporary edition, which happens quite a lot in the work that I do. There's tons of information that they just gave me. So if they said, I want a modern house, I've got to think about, well, okay, I know what modernism is. It's a movement in architecture in the 20s and 30s and 40s. It's not today's architecture. It can mean that today's architecture, in my mind, is contemporary architecture. But anyway, there's lots of information there. Anybody that knows anything about modernism or modern architecture, just go online and take a look at all the different modern kinds of architecture there are. So there's lots of information that we get from answering that question, what? If you can hear that, that is my dog in the background. He's a big yellow lab and he's 13, so he's kind of crazy. So hopefully he calms down. If he doesn't, I'll have to let him out. So we've got our first two questions, who and then what? Lots of information, architects getting inspired, coming up with ideas. What's the third question? Where? So this is a huge question. So the where is the site or the location. So I just finished up working on a project out in Aspen, Colorado, and the project was on a mountain, okay? And the house had 4 stories, and you entered at the top. Now think about that. Most buildings, you enter at the bottom, right? I mean, just about anywhere you go, you enter at the bottom, but this one, you enter at the top. So what's that all about? Well, it's about where. It's on a mountain, so we've got topography to deal with. So the site tells you lots of information. It tells us about the sun, the wind, topography, precipitation, zoning, infrastructure, right? Sidewalks and water and sewer and electricity and all that stuff. And then there's plant and wildlife. So the site gives us lots of information that we then take and turn into ideas, which then ultimately are designed and become buildings. So this is what we do as architects. We ask those first 3 questions, who, what, and where. So we got 3, but we haven't gotten to the 4th yet. The 4th is a question that we really ask, and that question is why. And in my mind, we're answering, why does a building look the way it does? And that really has to do with who you are. So I get way more into this on my site. In the 2 courses that you see to the right of the free course, How to Design Like an Architect Web and How to Design Like an Architect Live. And this is all about what happens in our minds when we design and how that happens. But essentially, your mind is built on 2 things, knowledge and experience, and that comes from our life, where we started and where we end up and where we went to school and who we know and what we learned, and it's nature-nurture. Right? I call it the why filter. So why a building looks the way it does is really because of you. So if you put 10 architects in a room and you asked them to design something and you gave them a program and a client and you gave them a project, all 10 architects are going to design something different. Now they may be similar relative to what people learn, but at the end of the day, you're going to have a different building. Okay. So look, in my mind, this is keys to the castle stuff. Who, what, where, and why. You ask those questions, you answer the last, you are going to be able to design just about anything. So we get back to howtoarchitect.com, as I said. So upper left-hand corner is the free course. Join there, and I start to touch on this stuff. What's great about that is there are a series of videos, and then I've got text which accompany every one of those videos which describe what you're seeing. So it's more than just what you're getting on YouTube. Beyond that, to the right of that is the How to Architect web class. So what's really neat about the web class is there's 2.5 hours of this content, which is great, and it's all recorded, and you can take it online, and then if you choose, you can take the live course, and we meet on Saturdays, and we get to sit down and talk, and people literally do come from all over the world to sit down and talk about architecture and the design, and you get to do a project. So I'd ask you to go on the site and join the basics of design. Next week, what I want to do, I'm going to do this same thing, and I will post it properly on Google Hangouts on Air. We're going to do a class, which I offer on the site, but I'm going to do it live. And the class is how to be a successful architect. Now, the reality is this is way more than just being a successful architect. It's how to become a successful professional with architecture in there. We're going to talk about why architecture is such a challenging profession. So I get a lot of students that ask, well, should I even become an architect because it's a difficult economy or it's a difficult business, or I hear my architecture buddies complaining all the time that school is really hard, or they can't get a great job, or they're working their tails off. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about how to be successful in your job, with your boss, with your clients, with contractors, and ultimately how to improve your own skills. So how to build your own skill set to get the job you want and to do really well at it. So it's one of my favorite classes to give, and we talk a little bit about networking too. So it's going to help you figure out, okay, I want this job, how do I get this job? And who do I contact and how do I do it? And what's the most professional way to go about it? So what I'm going to ask is that it's essentially a prepaid class. So go to howtoarchitect.com, click on how to be a successful architect, pay the $20, show up next week. If you don't pay before the class, please, after you're done watching, you can go to the site and pay for the class, and that'll be great. And I'm essentially doing that as on an honor system basis. So I'm going to post it on Google+. I'd love to see you there. It's one of my favorite classes to give, and it's lots of content. We'll be there for at least 45 minutes to an hour, and then I'll be around to answer questions when we're all done. So thank you very much for joining me. I'm going to try to sort out questions here. And, okay, so we got some group chat stuff here. I'll tell you what, if anybody that I can see, if you guys want to unmute and ask some questions, you're welcome to. And I'm going to go to this Google Plus site here and take a look. Oh, this is a good question. So Jason Lloyd asked on the site, I'm a third-year architecture student at University of Manchester. I'm currently looking for an internship for the 2015-16 academic year for my part study. I'm wondering if you have any advice on getting an internship. Right, so I'm going to talk about that next week, but I would essentially say in very simple terms that people are so easy to contact today. You know, you go to the site, you go to their website, you find people that work there, and you ultimately kind of work your way into your life if you're daring, into their lives if you're daring enough. And that you know, may or may not work. What is very helpful is where you go to school and who you get to meet. So again, we'll talk more about that next week, and I'd love to cover that in more detail. But I wish you the best. What I will say about school in general is that these work-study programs are awesome. And I wish I had done that when I was in college, because I would have gotten a much better sense for what architecture really entailed, what being an architect was like. And those programs are super helpful because you get to work, make a little bit of money, and also you get a feel for what it is that you're going to be doing for at least the next 20, 30, or 40 years. So those are great courses.
I'm in construction too. If you've got that opportunity, that will help you immensely.
Uh-oh, Jess, I can hear you, but barely.
Sorry, I was just saying I would get a job in construction too, because that'll help you immensely in your architectural endeavors.
Yeah, it's so true. It really is, and what's nice is when you get a job in construction, you get a sense for what the contractors think of the architects. And the reason that's great is you're going to hear a lot of griping, and it will make you a better architect because you then change the way you work and talk to people because you understand what other people think of you. So I'd say it's great advice. I worked for a contractor. I worked underneath a backhoe and digging ditches, and at least a couple times. And I climbed roofs and got kicked off roofs because I was so scared, and all kinds of stuff, man. It's a great experience if you're ready for some serious work.
Absolutely. I'd say that there's no shortage of the need for humility, and there's nothing like a hard labor construction job to give that to prospective architects.
Wow, Jess, I totally agree. I mean, if you're not going to be humble as an architect, you better forget it. I mean, you may be the greatest architect, you may be the most talented architect in the world, but unless you walk out onto that site and have respect for the people that are building your buildings and talk to them in a way that they understand and want to hear you, you're in big trouble. So let me take a look at another question here. Can you give us step-by-step how-to guide for looking and applying for architecture work experience placement internship? Again, we're going to talk about that a little bit more next week. And it's really a big question. I probably don't have time to answer today. But look, I tell people to go down to your local architect, wherever they are, walk in the front door, and ask for a job. Or ask for a half hour of someone's time so you can sit and listen to them talk about what they do for a living. That's a big deal. It's a game changer. You're going to sit there, you're going to see the models that they're making, the computer programs they're working on, the construction documents that people are thoroughly reviewing. You're going to hear people talking on the phone to contractors. You're going to learn so much in 10 minutes that a college education isn't even going to give you. I mean, really, college is very different, at least in the United States. What you learn in college is very different than what you're going to ultimately do as an architect. And that's one of the reasons I love giving this course, giving the different courses that I do, is that you really need to know what it is that you're going to be doing as an architect, and you're not going to learn that most likely in college unless you're going to a program, a work-study program. Another question, I'm working in Project Institute, and our main customer always asks us for something new, modern, to improve their sales. But as we give them something new, they're saying that we are, and nobody will buy it. They make their adjustments and they get what they're already got. How to make your opinion have weight for customers? I'm not even sure that applies to architecture. I don't even know what to say. I would say communication is the key. As an architect, and just about everything else in life, including marriage. So keep talking.
Hey, Doug?
Yes, sir.
Are you going to be covering portfolios and how those play into the job hunt?
I will. In fact, I give a course on my site about how to make a portfolio. So
awesome.
I would recommend people take the class and then talk to me. I would recommend that in general. Well, the great thing about the site is when you take a class, you can take a class and then email me with questions. So it's a great way to communicate and get more information about what it is you need to know to be a successful architect. So I wish more people did it. I mean, I love teaching it. I've been practicing for 20 years, so I love to talk about architecture and being an architect.
I'm going to step out real quick and get the charger for my computer.
No problem. Right. No problem. I got a question here. There's an architect in my town, and I rang him up same week. I went to see him for half an hour and then ended up in the pub with him. Dude, totally. So now he's looking at my portfolio, and I'm waiting for a reply. There it is, man. That is so smart. That's just awesome. That's exactly what you do. If you get to meet people, they're going to like you. If you're humble and you're a hard worker, you're going to get what you want. I mean, that's just the way life is. And if you don't get what you want from them, they're going to point you in the right direction. I mean, it's all about communication. It's about meeting people, going out of your way. I mean, when I was young, I lived in France briefly, and I didn't speak French. So I wrote down what I needed to say to possible employers, and then I called them. And I had a paragraph that I would say, and then if they would actually, and then I asked them if they could please speak English with me, because it was, you know, my tongue, and if they wanted to talk to me, they would, and if they didn't want to, they hung up on me.
Like this. And if you don't get
Okay. Let's see here. All right, guys. Well, if we don't have any more questions, I think I'm going to hang it up. It was nice to meet everybody, and I look forward to seeing you over at my website and on my courses. And
I've got one.
oh, go ahead, man.
May I, and feel free to say no because I don't want to put you on the spot, but may I shamelessly plug Big Time Small Firm?
Yeah, please.
Okay, for those of you who are either practicing or on the verge of practicing in architecture, I run another Google Plus community called Big Time Small Firm, and I do live hangouts on air like these every other week. We've got one coming up here in about 40 minutes, and I just wanted to ask Doug if it'd be okay, and I'll post a link in this event to today's hangout.
Yeah, please do, man. Absolutely. That's great.
Cool. Thank you.
Oh,
So if you can make it, I'm going to be talking about, I went to the South Atlantic Regional meeting yesterday where National presented their member services strategies.
how was that?
It was good. I'm impressed. They're going to be doing some budget restructuring in the way that dues money filters from National back down to the local components. And it's focused on member services, this restructuring is, and each AIA section will have to become accredited in order to receive certain line item budget income or revenue from National moving forward. So on the state level in North Carolina and a number of other states that are organized like we are, we're going through an accreditation process in order to get those budget funds.
Sounds very informative. Okay, hold on a second. Let's see here. Quick question before you go. Would it be best to get an internship at a small or large firm? That is an amazing question because it's loaded. You know, and everybody's going to have a bias. I've always worked in small firms, and I love that. I enjoy small firms. It's really easy to get to know everybody and feel very comfortable. I would say that ultimately some people are suited for one or the other, and you may or may not know that based on your preferences in life. And, you know, big groups, small groups, that sort of thing. But what I will say, bottom line, is a small firm, in my experience, get more experience more quickly because there are fewer people to do these jobs. So, as an example, I worked for a very small firm in Baltimore called Ziegler Sneed, and they're a great office, and they're tiny. And I worked for the architecture wing, the residential architecture wing of the firm. There were only 2 people. And so it was trial by fire. I mean, I got sent out in the field and I was instantly a project manager. And that was really, really scary, but really, really good for me because I was lucky. I worked with some great contractors that really cared about what I could and should learn. And I got a lot of help, and I became a better architect because of it. So I would say, and I say this in a book that I just finished called Old School Architect, hopefully we'll get that thing published at some point, but I talk a lot about this idea that trial by fire is really important for young people. And you're going to fail, and it's going to be really scary, but I always recommend doing things that are scary because you learn quickly and you become better for it. So I like small firm. Jess probably likes small firm too. Jess, do you have an opinion?
I do, and I've worked mostly in small firms, but I've had a little bit of experience in a little bit larger corporate outfits. I mean, nothing on the scale of like HOK or Gensler or, you know, one of those thousands of people that are spread out all over the world type firms. I worked at LRK for a short stint, which is probably the largest firm I've worked for, and I just
Where was that?
at Looney Rick's Kiss, based out of Memphis, Tennessee.
Okay. And how many people was that roughly?
At the time, they were verging on 1,200 people.
Oh my goodness.
And that's going from memory. And I'd have to see how many people they have now. I'm sure that through the economic changes, it's at or above, that level or close to it. But the biggest firm I've ever worked for a long time had just at 400 employees, and the office where I was a big engineering, small architecture kind of outfit as far as our revenue. And it was really cool to work for the EA firm and get some cross-training in transportation and civil and geological engineering. So if you can do that corporate thing, I'd say, try to get a job in an engineering architecture firm or
Right.
architecture engineering firm, just from the learning process point of view and the educational opportunities. So, but opinion-wise, I'm like you. I prefer small firms, and I'm currently running one. And it's a lot more on a personal level, and I seem to find people in small firms care a lot more about about the quality of the experience and the design than the bottom line, and
Okay.
that's just my personal opinion.
No, I think that's very, very helpful for these guys. You're going to learn different things at different sized firms, and and you got to try both. I think. I
agree. It's like you said. It's a personal thing, and the only way to find out really is to try as many opportunities as you can find in different areas.
Agreed. Opportunities is the key word there. I'm getting a couple questions here. Any advice for a student looking to get a job and experience in another related field before transferring into architecture? That's a really good question, but I would turn the question around, and what I would say is, unless you're already an engineer, I would recommend architecture as a career to most people, simply because my experience is that what you learn as an architect can actually translate into other fields. So in my opinion, you could go from architecture to become a civil engineer or into civil engineering, but going from civil engineering to architecture is a little bit more difficult. That is because as an architect, you're learning a lot about a lot. And so you've got to know all of the intricacies, maybe not specifically about civil engineering. It depends, again, on the size of firm, the kind of work you're doing. But you're learning a lot about a lot. It's kind of a very generalized education and a very specific one, too. So anyway, I would definitely, if somebody said, I'm trying to decide between civil engineering and structural engineering or architecture, I'd say if they're well suited to be an architect, as well as the other two, I would go for architecture for sure. I have a quick question. I'm from Romania. My dream is getting into level design for either games or film animation, but there are no options. Okay, let me read on here. So very handy with software. Again, like that's going to be really tough for me to answer because we're talking about architecture today in terms of building architecture. Another question, I'm the one who asked you about space and light in video. Can we talk about that after this topic? That is a really challenging and nuanced conversation that I'm not so sure we could really cover unless we had a building that we were looking at. So I think what I'd like to do is, at some point over the course of 6 months when we're doing Hangouts, we'll take a piece of architecture and we could talk more specifically about that. All right. So I'm going to draw toward a close here. I would also, the last thing I'd do is recommend Jess Stafford's big-time small firm Google Hangout. The guy's really smart and he knows what he's doing, and he and I have met a couple times at AIA events, and he's a neat guy. You'll really enjoy sitting down and listening to him talk.
Thank you.
Also joining Jess in the discussion. So I wish you guys the best. Jess, it was really nice to have you here today. Thanks for joining me, and join anytime. And guys, I look forward to seeing you over at howtoarchitect.com. Sign up for the free class and then contact me and then sign up for How to Design Like an Architect on web or live. It's a super awesome experience. You get to meet a lot of really neat people, and I still am in contact with people that took that class 4 or 5 years ago and have now just about finished college in architecture, and it's a really neat thing. So thanks very much, everybody, for being here. It was great to see you all, and I wish you all the best. Email me anytime. Take care, and we'll see you at our class next Friday at 10 o'clock. Please prepay and join us. Take care, and we'll see you soon. Bye.